ABC's Jon Karl, who's been manning the fact-check desk tonight. Jon, biggest fact abuser tonight? Who was it?
Well, I have to say that I think Romney tried to be a little more careful, and I think he was able to call out President Obama on a bunch of big ones, primarily because they were what the president was saying about Romney's own plans. So, Dan, let's start with what was the big one that dominated the whole first part of the debate. The big question over just what kind of a tax cut Mitt Romney is proposing. Take a listen.
This is where there's a difference because Governor Romney's central economic plan calls for a $5 trillion tax cut on top of the extension of the Bush tax cuts. That's another $1 trillion, and $2 trillion in additional military spending that the military hasn't asked for. That's $8 trillion. How we pay for that, reduce the deficit, and make the investments that we need to make without dumping those costs on the middle-class Americans, I think, is one of the central questions of this campaign.
Now, there's a lot to unpack here, but the number that the president kept coming back to was $5 trillion, that Mitt Romney is proposing $5 trillion in new tax cuts. Romney said that's not true, and we rate that assertion to be mostly false, mostly fiction. I'm sorry, I don't want to get my label. Mostly fiction. And the reason is because Mitt Romney has been clear for a long time that he is proposing no net tax cuts at all. He has proposed cutting tax rates by 20% across the board, but what he's saying is that he will close loopholes to make up for that so that nobody should expect more money in their paychecks. Now, Mitt Romney has not given us details on exactly what loopholes he would close, but that doesn't mean the president gets to kind of make it up for him and say that this is $5 trillion, that there won't be any loopholes closed, it'll be $5 trillion in tax cuts. There's more to that, but that is a pretty central assertion. Now, I think looking forward, Dan, the big question is, will Mitt Romney come out and give some more details about what loopholes he'd close? Now let's take a look at one from Mitt Romney. This was about the president's health care plan. Centerpiece of that plan, of course, is guaranteeing coverage for people that have pre-existing conditions. This is what Mitt Romney said about his own plan.
But number one, pre-existing conditions are covered under my plan.
Mostly fiction. Mitt Romney does have a health care plan, not the one from Massachusetts, but he's got one he's currently proposing. And it does say that people who currently have health insurance or who have had it for 3 years cannot be, over the last 3 months, cannot be denied coverage. But Mitt Romney's plan offers no such guarantee for anybody who has not had health insurance for the past 3 months. So that claim is simply not true. Next up, Obama had this to say about his own plans for cutting the deficit.
And so I put forward a specific $4 trillion deficit reduction plan. It's on a website. You can look at all the numbers, what cuts we make and what revenue we raise.
Okay, now we have done that, and it is mostly fiction, sorry to say. The president does not have a plan to cut the deficits moving forward by $4 trillion. The $4 trillion plan he is referring to includes about $1 trillion that Congress has already cut. So he can't take credit for cutting something that's already been cut. And the other, another $1 trillion comes from ending the wars in Iraq and Afghanistan, wars that are already scheduled to be over. In fact, Iraq is over. So he's counting those savings as part of his $4 trillion plan. He doesn't quite have a $4 trillion plan to cut the deficit. Of course, neither does Mitt Romney, but that's another story. Finally, one more from Mitt Romney, and this is one we've heard a lot in his advertising and out on the campaign trail and here tonight in the debate.
What I support is no change for current retirees and near retirees to Medicare, and the president supports taking $716 billion out of that program.
Okay, so that assertion that the president supports taking $716 billion out of Medicare, I rate that not quite factual. It is true that under the president's health care law, he did find $716 billion to be cut out of future increases in Medicare. Medicare doesn't actually go down. In fact, the program continues its explosive growth. So there are $716 billion out of future increases. By the way, Paul Ryan has those same cuts and increases in his budget plan. And those are designed not to affect current retirees, beneficiaries. What those are is they squeeze providers, they cut down on fraud, find some efficiencies, but none of the $716 billion is designed to have any effect on actual Medicare beneficiaries. So, as you can see, Dan, there was quite a bit on both sides. I do believe that Mitt Romney came into this debate wanting to clear up some of what he saw and what are factual inaccuracies that the president has said about his plan.
And we're glad to have you as the referee, Jon Karl. Thank you for your reporting from Washington tonight.